Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Ball, and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On our show here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all our different coaches, experts, and guests their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. Our guest on the show today embodies the idea of coach, expert, and guest as much as anybody I've had the privilege and pleasure of speaking to. Our guest today is David Durante. He is an American artistic gymnast, was the 2007 US all-round champion, and has been to, I believe, 2 separate Olympic Games. He now focuses his time on his business and camp Power Monkey Fitness, whilst being one of the original gymnastic go-to guys among the world of CrossFit. I feel extremely privileged to have had the opportunity to have Dave on the show and can't be any more thankful for him being willing to give up his time and come and speak with me. I know you guys are going to really enjoy this one. And yeah, as always, please take that inspiration to share, to recommend, to like, to subscribe. Dave was a wonderful guy to talk to, full of fantastic information, and I hope you guys enjoy. Dave Durante, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I've been really excited to talk to you. So first and foremost, thank you very much for taking the time out to speak with us. And welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast.
Yeah, man, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So I was going to ask, I hope everything has gone well. We were scheduled to do last week, and you had a very, very important kind of event that you had to take care of.
Yeah.
Everything's good, right?
Yep, everything's good. My wife is pregnant again, so we had to go to the doctor and have some tests done, and everything's looking good. We're looking forward to our child number 2 coming in 2020.
Amazing. That's super cool. So I'm sure that lots of the people who I'm friends with from my kind of world of CrossFit are going to be excited to listen to me talk to you. But why don't you give us a little bit of a background about what you did beforehand, you're the CrossFit Gymnastics guy. Like literally, I think if people want to know about gymnastics in CrossFit, they track down your Instagram and they see, the stuff you do on there is just mind blowing. Like your technique, the strength, the flexibility. You're like the epitome of what gymnastics looks like if you're a CrossFitter. Oh yeah, check out Dave Durante. It's just.
Thank you.
If I try and point my toes like you, I say, let's not even go anywhere near.
Takes a long time to be able to build that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but you were, I don't want to butcher it. Why don't you, if it's okay, give us a bit of a background?
Sure. I'll make it as brief as I can, but I grew up in New Jersey, just outside of New York City. I started gymnastics when I was 6 years old. I played a ton of different sports growing up: baseball, basketball, played soccer and wrestling, and gymnastics was the one that really took a hold. Was fortunate enough to, compete through high school, and then got a scholarship to Stanford University out in the Bay Area. So I moved from New Jersey out to California, and I competed for Stanford's team for 4 years. After I graduated, I stuck around Stanford for another couple of years and was part of Team USA at that point. I finally made my first national team the year after I graduated. And and was on Team USA for 6 years. After the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens, which I just missed out on, I moved to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and I lived there for 4.5 years, training for Team USA, leading up to the Beijing Olympic Games in 2008. During that time, I was on a few World Championship teams, was on a few Pan American Games and Championship teams, was national champion a bunch of times, and then was part of the team that went to Beijing in 2008 as the alternate. After I retired, I moved back to Stanford and helped coach the team to a national championship in 2009. And right around that time is when I found CrossFit and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next in the fitness world and how to stay in shape now that I wasn't going to be competing anymore, and started doing my own kind of circuits in the gym, waiting for the guys to come in and work out every day, and got bored after a little while with the circuits that I was creating on my own, and searched online and found CrossFit, and it kind of snowballed from there. A buddy of mine had a garage gym that I would go and train at and help people with their technique, and eventually caught the eye of Dave Castro and some people over at CrossFit headquarters, where got invited out to shoot some videos for them and work on some technique stuff, and got bigger and bigger. And then eventually Power Monkey became a thing, and that's what I'm doing full time now.
Yeah, I wanna touch on Power Monkey because it looks like one of the coolest things that someone could get to do in the world of CrossFit. Like, they always look like such amazing camps. And since I got back into CrossFit, because I was into it. I think I got into it the first time around the time that Rich won his third individual title. Was training and shock horror, got injured. And because martial arts is my day job, and it was like, okay, what's got to be sacrificed? And at the time it was CrossFit. Do you know what I mean? Got back into it a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and basically it almost seems like everybody I follow at some point or another touches down at Power Monkey and does a camp. It looks super cool. But just out of curiosity, like, what were your gymnastic, like, where were your specialties? Where were your favorites? Like, was it floor? Was it bar? Was it ring? Like, what did you really enjoy doing the most?
I always tell people that on good days I like doing all of them, and on bad days I didn't like doing any of them. So it really depended on how the body was feeling that particular day. But in terms of where my body allowed for the strengths to be, my body type, I was more of an upper body guy. So I excelled on rings, high bar, parallel bars, pommel horse. Those were the events that were a little bit stronger for me. My legs were always weaker. I had a lot of knee issues. So floor and vault were always a little bit weaker for me. But really where I contributed the most was that I was a pretty solid all-arounder. I've been a top all-arounder in the U.S. a number of times, and that kind of was where one of my main strengths was for Team USA, that I could be a solid all-arounder and somebody they could count on in a variety of different events.
I feel like you were one of the people, I'm sure you were, to share, and I'm going to butcher this as well, so I apologize in advance, but there was a world record done, one high bar, swing, back somersault, land on the other high bar. I'm sure you shared this.
You mean swinging from one bar to another?
Yeah, like a significant travel and landing and catching and flipping out. Because this was done, I think, at a gym here in the UK with a gent named Niall Wilson.
I did see Niall do something like that.
It wasn't Niall that did it. I think it was one of Niall's coaches. It
was one of his coaches?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I posted something a while back, just, it was a gymnast from Michigan, like playing around in the gym, going from a set of rings and launching himself to a bar. This is a while back, but I don't think I ever posted anything from Niall, one of his coaches doing it, but I wouldn't be surprised. He's always doing some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I'm certain you are the only guy outside of Niall that I follow that would stand out as being gymnastics. Maybe I'm wrong, because I was going to ask you about it. It was such an unbelievable thing. I watched. Does the name Ross Edgley mean anything to you?
I don't know that name.
He swam around Great Britain last year.
Wow!
Like, literally swam around the coast. Didn't touch his feet on land for something like half a year, and swam around the coast. And he does quite a lot of kind of collaborative videos with Niall, and he tried to just literally make it from one bar to another, and just the mess he made of his hand.
It's amazing what gymnasts can do, right? Make the impossible look very, very easy.
That's what I was going to say. Like, he's a strong, fit, unbelievable athlete, and he tried something which I'm sure you would do personally, very simply, and it just ruined him.
Oh yeah. Well, you put me in water, and I'm going to drown too. I mean, I'm not swimming more than 50 feet. So we all have our strengths.
Exactly. So, touch on Power Monkey then, Dave. Like, give us an idea of what that is and where is it located. If I'm out in America again next year, where can I go? Hopefully, to try and get involved, and so on and so forth.
So briefly, Power Monkey is more than just the camp that you're mentioning. I'll just touch briefly on what we do as a company. We have kind of a few different prongs to the business. One is our education side, and Power Education is essentially our online platforms, and we have an app where we have programs created for people to learn how to move better through gymnastics movements. It's a GPP plan for gymnastics on our online platform, and more skill-specific plans on our app, which is called Monkey Method. Along with that, we have a ton of high-level coaches who were once athletes who've transitioned into coaching in a variety of different fields. Weightlifting is the one that we're most closely associated with, but we have kettlebell instructors, we have rowing instructors, we have endurance trainers, we have jump rope experts. We have people in all of these various fields who have contributed content to our different programs. Along with that, we also have our equipment side. We make a piece of apparatus called the ring thing, which is in the gymnastics world, it's called the dream machine a lot of times. It basically means you make your ring dreams come true using an apparatus like this. It's a 50-50 device, meaning it works through a pulley system. Whereas you pull down on rings, there's a harness around your waist, and it can lift your body off the ground at 50% of the body weight. So you can work on really, really challenging movements with good technique. You can understand where your body is within space, and you can slowly start to add and increase the difficulty by putting more weight onto the apparatus. So that's the equipment side. We have a certification that goes along with that and a whole class and curriculum along with it. And then the event side is the last portion of Power Monkey, and this is kind of what you're coming to. First, we do clinics and 1- and 2-day clinics all over the world. But our camp is something really special and unique. And our camp is a full week long. You come on a Sunday, you leave on a Saturday. It's hosted in this really remote location, 150-acre campus in the woods of Tennessee. It's kind of smack in the middle between Knoxville, Tennessee, and Nashville, Tennessee. And it's a kids' gymnastics camp in the summers that 2 Olympic buddies of mine own. And I've been going there for, upwards of 15 years now, teaching little kids in the summers. And about 7 years ago now, we said, you know what, why don't we try to take this amazing facility and use it for something else, try to bring some adults out here, and with the incredible staff of experts that we, have come across over the years, see if we can entice some of these coaches to come out and be with us for a week and see if we can bring some people out to participate. And it's turned into something really, really special. We have about 100 participants each camp, and then another 50 to 70 guest staff and coaches. So it's between 150 and 170 people each camp from all over the world. We have people from, between 17 and 20 countries normally, from all different skill levels, all different backgrounds, all different age groups. It's a really, really special week, and I highly encourage people to come check it out. It's called Power Monkey Camp, and the website is powermonkeycamp.com.
Amazing. Just chuckling to myself at how little I understood about it, just seeing a few pictures on Instagram, so I apologize about that.
Not at all.
That sounds amazing. When is the next one?
Next one's going to be May 3rd through the 9th. It's going to be our 13th camp. So we've done quite a few of these over the years, and we're getting a good handle of how these things run. So we're pretty proud of what it's become.
So one thing I'm interested in, given what you mentioned about coaching and stuff, it's obviously well known that, just because you're a world-class athlete doesn't mean that you're a world-class coach. You can be a world-class coach without being a world-class athlete. In the UK, obviously, football, soccer is much bigger to us, and I'm a Manchester United fan. No one knows who Alex Ferguson is from playing football, but everyone, I think, knows who Alex Ferguson is from coaching football.
Sure.
So it's even more impressive that you've gone from being an outstanding athlete to then the coaching side of things. So what drew you to doing that as well? Like what do you get out of coaching? What do you enjoy the most about doing that side of things as well?
Yeah, well, first I'll say that you're exactly right that being a high-level athlete doesn't necessarily translate to being a high-level coach. In fact, most times high-level athletes are not good coaches. I think majority of the time that ends up being the case. And from my mind, kind of my perspective on it is that a lot of very talented high-level athletes gain skills and find success very easily in the sport world in terms of learning skills and learning movement. And it's very difficult for them to be able to express how a skill is learned or how they learned it because it came very easily for them.
Does it come easily to you doing
No, absolutely not. And I think that's what allows me to, have transition in the coaching side a little bit more easily because I was not very talented. I was not a very, sought after athlete growing up as being like someone that was on track to potentially partake in, national team and things like that. In fact, everything in my life has been kind of delayed in terms of my success. I think I was the oldest person to ever make their first national team. I didn't make my first national team until I was 23 years old. I was the oldest guy on the national team when we went to Beijing. I was 28 years old. So everything in my life has been kind of later because it took me a long time to develop. It took me a long time to understand how these skills needed to be learned. And so my trajectory was very slow. It was very, very slow. It was very much a grind, very much put your head down and kind of go and understand that the bumps along the road are going to be more common than maybe you would see with the super talented guy next to you, which I had a fair share of those along my way too. But it allowed me to really kind of pinpoint the deficiencies that come along with skill learning and be able to understand how to get over humps or be able to explain things a little bit more in depth that someone who has the talent level and just things come organically to are not able to kind of express those things. So I feel fortunate in a lot of ways that my learning curve and my learning process allowed me to kind of prolong the learning experience, because for what I'm doing now, it's really helped me in terms of understanding where other people are coming from in their learning process.
Why did you find yourself so dedicated and committed and probably stubborn to stick it out when you were finding it more difficult than the people around you?
Yeah, I think it's a really fair question. I love gymnastics. I love the challenge. I love the fact that, there's only such a few handful of people in the world that can do these movements at a very high level and especially make them look beautiful and easy and effortless. And to me, that was exciting. It was enticing. Like I said, I played a ton of different sports growing up, but gymnastics was the one that kind of filled this need or this urge of a specific challenge. Like I never found that kind of a challenge in any other thing I've ever done in my life. So, you get this kind of like need for a challenge and then you succeed just a tiny bit and you recognize that the path that put you onto that success was worth it. And the sacrifices that you made. And, I like to think of myself as very passionate about gymnastics, but passion kind of borderlines on obsession in a lot of ways. Yeah. But, you look at passionate people, it's a much more positive take as opposed to obsession being kind of more of a negative look at it. But you have to be kind of so involved and so kind of in love with what you're doing if you want to be able to achieve those really high levels of success. And that was me. Like I always wanted to put in the sacrifices and put in the things that other people weren't able to or weren't willing to do. And I just love that mentality of being like, okay, you might be more talented than me, but you're never going to work harder. And that's kind of what allowed me to kind of start to slowly separate myself from the people that were better than me growing up.
Do you think, a couple of the people I've talked to on podcasts, over the last 7 days, we've sort of touched on the idea of today's modern social media. And like, for example, it could be quite easy for me sometimes to sit and let's say I have a good day at my local CrossFit gym. Like I've always really enjoyed the gymnastic-y side of things. Like I am not particularly talented at them. I've got that power to weight ratio that lends itself more to doing gymnastics than it does having a heavy snatch or a heavy squat clean. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't do a squat clean in a CrossFit gym for a long time because I avoided those workout days.
Sure.
But I liked trying to do bar muscle ups. I liked trying to get ring muscle ups. I can't remember if it was this year or last year that I got my first strict ring muscle up, and it was something I thought I would never be able to do, and I loved it. But let's say I'm having a good day and I go on and then I see Dave Durante and I'm like, oh, I suck. Because if I compare myself to you, I do. But
you
so this
can't
might
do
be
that.
I know it might be a difficult question to answer, but I would be intrigued to hear what you had to say, of course. Do you think that you would have found it more difficult struggling on your journey if you'd have had social media to be having to ignore and compare yourself to, do you think? Or did it never bother you that people got it quicker than you and you just took it as drive or inspiration? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up without social media, obviously, when I was a kid. And I got my first iPhone when I went to the Olympics. 2008, iPhone came out. My first iPhone I had a sponsorship with AT&T, and they gave me an iPhone. That was my introduction into kind of, where social media is today. It was 11 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So within the past decade, social media has turned into something fairly significant in terms of every aspect of people's lives. Do I think that social media would have changed the way that I approach training? Probably not, because of what you're saying, like, seeing people do amazing things and that be discouraging to someone that's not super talented. I found that to be the case every day anyway,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
of the people that I trained with. You know what I mean? I saw it firsthand. I didn't need an Instagram account to be able to see that there were amazing people around the world doing incredible gymnastics. I saw it every day in the gym. I was training at Stanford. The guys on the team were just out of this world. I was training at the Olympic Training Center, and you have the best gymnasts from around the United States all living and training together. These guys were,
Okay.
setting the tone
Yeah.
for, that level around the world anyway. So I got to see it firsthand, and I knew that I had my work cut out for me anyway. So for me, I don't think it would have affected my ability to push through, because I already knew what people were doing, and I already had it in me to say that no matter what other people are doing, it's more important to me to put the work in anyway.
I
So I
like
think it would have just been it would have been more of a distraction than a benefit.
I like that. No matter what other people are doing, it's more important to you to focus on what you're doing. That's a
Yeah,
different
you got
way
to
of
put the
looking.
blinders on. You put the blinders
Yeah.
on and you go.
So, can you give me a little bit of an insight into what it was like getting involved in CrossFit at that point and seeing like what's happened, as in like that journey that it's had over the last 10 years? Because again, I think of you as from a limited standpoint. I always enjoy watching the gymnastics when it's on at the Olympics, and I feel like we're fortunate in Great Britain to have athletes to be proud of when it comes to gymnasts at an Olympic level. But I've always known you as the gymnastics guy, it's a popular belief amongst people, I think. But it must have been interesting to kind of get involved in CrossFit at such an early point. Like, what gym did you first join?
Yeah, so I have been doing it for a number of years now, coming up on my 10th year, I guess, in some capacity. And I feel really fortunate to be part of the CrossFit community. I love CrossFit. I really enjoy it. I feel like, I try to do it as many times a week as I possibly can. I think it has so many positive things around it that have allowed me to grow as an athlete. I've created a community in my life around, CrossFit athletes and other members at the gyms that I've attended. The first gym that I ever went to was actually just a garage gym. It was a buddy of mine running workouts out of his garage, which turned into what's known now. I think it's still running. It's in a different facility, but it's called CrossFit Koa in New Jersey. And this was when I was, after Stanford. I was doing more on my own at that point. I moved back to New Jersey, and I was living there for a little while and working out at that gym, and then moved to New York City, and I was living in Queens, and going to CrossFit Long Island City, which is where I kind of really made some good strides and started doing more within the CrossFit community. The owner there, Vadim Noskov, who's an incredible coach, incredible owner. That gym unfortunately is closed, but he's since opened another one up in New Jersey, in North Jersey. But
That's cool.
yeah, that's kind of where I had started. Again, number of years ago, but it slowly snowballed into more and more seminars and more kind of instruction, teaching, along with actually being an athlete.
Does your outstanding gymnastic skill mean you have like the sickest Fran time? Like, have you got an amazing Fran time because of the
No,
gymnastics?
because I can't do a
Or is
thruster for
it?
shit. Like for everything that I can do on the bar, like don't put a barbell in my hand because I'm miserable. So, workouts like, I don't know, JT would be a little
Yeah.
bit more in my alley, or, Annie, where it's more body weight stuff I'm really strong at. There are certain ones that lend itself more to my
Which is the
strengths,
one that they did at the games the last time? Which is the one that's pull-ups and there's handstand push-ups and like
is
I
it
was expecting.
Mary?
Is that Mary? And like
Maybe
I
Mary they
think
did at the
Corey
games?
Pierce absolutely smashed
Oh,
it.
yeah. Carrie was a monster, and Carrie did all strict handstand push-ups throughout the
Yeah.
entire workout. So,
Is
I
that
mean, like,
a good one for you as well?
yeah, sure. That would be a workout that I would, do well at. But, Carrie's a former gymnast. She went to University of Michigan. She has a background that lends itself well to those kind of movements as well. So you take advantage of her strengths, but definitely you put a barbell in my hand, and I enjoy doing barbell movements, but don't expect any PRs or anything impressive out of me with barbell.
So JT over DT then, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Are there any particular CrossFit athletes that I'm going to know, that games athletes that you feel a particular affinity with, having coached them regularly? Is there anyone if that makes sense, anybody that you have been not intimately involved with, but as in regularly involved with?
Yeah, I mean, like with our Power Monkey Camp, we've had a ton of athletes come through. We've been really fortunate to have, some of the best CrossFit athletes come through Power Monkey Camp, and I've had a chance to work with them, a lot of them over the years, and they're fantastic. They're great people. They're obviously great athletes. There's a few that have always kind of like stuck out to me as just me being in awe of their capabilities, because I look at them as being similar to myself in terms of stature. Chris Spieler's one of them. Chris Spieler, Dan Bailey, guys that are my height. Chris Spieler specifically is my height, my weight, my age.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
Spieler has always been someone that I kind of was like, wow, like Spieler has, a similar size, age, weight as I do, and he can do things just through the roof that I would never think about being able to do. So I use him as a form of comparison, just to be able to say like, wow, like he is just so on another level in terms of what he can do across the board fitness wise, that I've always found him to be just like an incredible athlete. I had a chance to work with him a number of times at CrossFit headquarters, and he's come out to our Power Monkey Camp, things like that. And he's just an amazing dude, and his background, everything coming from a wrestling background, is just super incredible. And he picks up skills at the drop of a hat. Like he can do things that would normally take athletes years to develop, and he can do it in like 2 or 3 turns. It's very frustrating. It's really annoying when you see somebody like, oh, geez, really? I taught you that 2 turns ago and you can do it perfect. So he's one of those kind of annoying athletes with how good they are, but he's one of those guys that always stuck out.
I'm trying to remember the name. So do you remember his dude with quite a crazy mustache? And he is very light. Yes.
Cody Anderson?
Yes.
Yeah.
I imagine he's another person, because I remember watching him at,
sure,
I think it was the first year that CrossFit did Carson, and there was an event that was bar muscle ups and a clean ladder. And I remember the commentators banging on about how he wouldn't make it to a certain bar. Not only did he make it to that certain bar, but every muscle up that he did. I remember the way that he flicked off the bar.
Oh, yeah.
Into the next one. Just so cool. I love watching that back.
Yeah, he comes from gymnastics background. You can see it in his movement. He's very fluid. There's a couple former gymnasts on the men's side, a little bit more on the women's side in terms of.
Was another
one? What's that?
Pat Vellner was a former gymnast, I think.
Vellner? Yep.
Yeah.
Vellner did gymnastics, and Alec Smith. Alec Smith was a higher level gymnast out on the East Coast. There's guys you can see the way they move when they get onto a set of rings or onto a bar, and they're just fluid. They're efficient. They don't waste energy up there. And to be able to see some of those guys lift the weights that they do, it's extraordinary. To me, that's the real testament to what CrossFit has allowed for, is these, what would have been considered specialists turned into these all-around very capable athletes is really incredible.
I like the way that I think it was Alec's brother Ben on one of the old docs. It was either him or Dave said like, CrossFit build Batman. And that just made me want to go to the gym and do CrossFit more often.
Yeah, I think that one when Ben Affleck was his first Batman movie, he was they showed him training in the Batcave, and he was essentially like doing CrossFit workouts. And they're like, oh yeah, how else would Batman train?
Didn't I feel like that's what Henry Cavill did to get in the shape for
Superman?
Steel. I'm pretty sure he did
CrossFit. Possible, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. We can claim that. We'll take it. I think, speaking of Alec, I feel like what people on Instagram would love to see would be you trying to outdo him on his gymnastics videos that he does. I'm assuming you must have watched these amazing little complexes.
I know Alec really well. He's in New York now. He's at the same gym that I was coaching at, and Alec comes to most of our Power Monkey camps, and I've known Alec for a number of years now, and he's an absolutely extraordinary athlete. Like, one of the more impressive athletes that I think you'll come across, with his background being a gymnast. I don't know if you guys saw the games this past summer, but
of course,
the sprint event, he's obviously in the team now, but the sprint event where he looked like Superman. He was running like, I've never seen anyone like outside of the Olympic Games run as fast, and he had like Froning running next to him, and he's like, blowing by Froning, and
Yeah.
the guy is just incredible. He is just an amazing athlete. What he does on the gymnastics side, I mean, granted, he's a good 15 years younger than me, so he's still got a number of years under below me, where I'm starting to kind of get a little bit of age under my belt. But he's just an amazing athlete, so I'm always impressed with what he's putting out on Instagram.
I think the team that he's in is, so obviously myself being from the UK down in London, we have I say famous. If a big CrossFit athlete comes to the UK, they go to Wit Fitness down in London.
Yep, I was just there a couple weeks ago.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the coaches there is a chap named Sam Cowler. He coached a class that we went to when my girlfriend and I trained there, and he was an absolutely outstanding coach, made the experience unbelievably enjoyable. And I think that's the team that Alec is on, I think. They keep changing the name of it, but he was on Team Wit at one of the comps.
Yeah.
And then
I know he's had Wit as a sponsor and some other, but I'm not quite sure if Wit is the. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that he's done some stuff with them in the past. That's for sure.
So I enjoy the opportunity to speak to people on these podcasts where I get to ask some selfish questions. So I get to think about myself, Siri, getting involved, where I get to ask questions that are kind of something I would genuinely really like to ask. So speaking of really enjoying the gymnastics side of things, and again, this might be a difficult question to cover, particularly on a Skype podcast, but what would you recommend as maybe a 1 to 3 to 5 mobility exercises that I should do to ensure that I can continue to enjoy doing stuff off of a bar and off of rings? Because I'm not going to lie, when I've done them before, a bad shoulder has happened, bad elbows have happened, and what a better person to ask how to keep longevity in gymnastic movements than Dave Durante. So
sure. So one, you have to understand kind of what areas you're trying to tackle, right? So if you're saying shoulders, elbows, maybe upper back, you want to be doing more swinging.
Thoracic mobility is an issue for me.
Sure. So I would say we'll tackle each of those little areas specifically. Elbows take a really long time to get the connective tissue properly prepped for a lot of the dynamic action you're going to be doing. And with anything, to prep for dynamic action, you have to really do a lot more time under tension with isometric work. So my recommendation for starting point to get your elbows prepped for a lot of that dynamic action is going to be a lot more time spent in plank. Plank is going to be the most simplified version, and then building up towards plank and doing things in support on static apparatus. So things like parallel bars or between boxes or on dip bars, just holding position in a proper locked out elbow position where you're not really using the musculature, but you're really thinking about using the skeletal structure to hold the position in place, which will then in turn start building the stability of those connective tissues. And then from there, starting to build towards more dynamic action, holding support on rings and things like that, but then also building towards inversions and holding more time under tension and things like handstands. So those are going to be the things that I think will help a lot and get those elbows prepped for more advanced swinging, kipping, dynamic type actions. If you're talking about T-spine, we want to be thinking about a lot more bridge type work, where you're really thinking about, so bridge is a very advanced version here. So we start out with one that's called a reach back. A reach back would be kind of a starting point for this type of an action. So reach back, just so you can kind of a visual in terms of how it works, you would start back to wall, maybe about a foot to a foot and a half away from the wall, with the intention being arms would be completely up overhead, mimicking the same position that you would be in a handstand. And the action would be to reach up, pushing yourself as tall as you possibly can, and then reaching back, touching up as high as you can against the wall. And if you can do that, making sure that the initiation of the movement is coming from the upper back, and you're not bending the knees or pushing the hips or knees forward, and thinking about creating a nice uniform arch position, then you slowly start to move the feet further and further away from the wall. And this creates a bigger arch position and a bigger arch position. Over time, you start to stack up high boxes behind you and try to reach towards a high box. And then the high box goes to a low box, and then you're slowly working towards an actual full bridge position. This is done over time, slowly, to build stability as well as that mobility that you need in your upper back. One of the big limitations that we see with people with overhead positions working on kipping and swinging has less to do with thoracic spine or shoulders. Those are definitely areas of need for a lot of people. But one of the areas that gets most neglected is actually soft tissue of the underarm mobility. So we're talking
Okay.
about your lats, your teres, your tricep, even pec and bicep become a huge limiting factor for a lot of people going through
Just
swinging
listing
and doing
all of the
actions.
tight muscles that I have just for the record.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned it yourself that you come from more of a, a martial arts background. And we
Mm.
see this a lot with martial artists and with grapplers and with wrestlers, and people come from backgrounds where pulling is a lot of the sport that they do, where they become very tight in muscles that pull, and they don't work the opposition. They don't work a lot of pushing. So we
Okay.
need to be making sure that we're combating what you're doing on a regular basis from a pulling perspective and work on the opposition, work on pushing, especially a lot of horizontal pushing, which will kind of combat that same type of an action that you're doing from a pulling perspective. So
Okay.
I would recommend a lot more balancing out through a lot of pushing exercises, but then also working a lot in supinated grip, working on hold
Okay.
positions in an under grip, because as soon as you start getting into supinated grip, you can start tackling some of those limiting muscles, lats, teres, tricep, even pec and bicep, and working on hanging in those positions, working on negative pull-ups where you're really thinking about tempo, trying to elongate those muscle fibers through some negatives. Those are
Okay.
some things that will help kind of loosen up some of those maybe limiting muscle fibers, as opposed to just continuing to do the same things you've been doing in the past.
I find it really, really interesting that nothing you just said then involved what I'd considered to be mobility work. Nothing about a mobility ball, nothing about a band, nothing about a foam roller or stretching. Like, because I was talking to a guy yesterday. He follows you. He's a gentleman named Tom Merrick here in the UK. Lives down on the very south coast. He's got quite a successful YouTube channel. He's calls himself the Bodyweight Warrior.
Okay.
And he obviously is going to be somebody that follows yourself. And I had a similar conversation with him about different parts of the body. And he didn't mention a single static stretch, a single mobility ball or foam roller exercise, which I'm excited about. It gives me new things to try to see changes in myself, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
for sure. Now, I will say that, the variety of stretching is important as well. I think that static stretching and passive and active and PNF variations using a foam roller, there are benefits to those things. There are studies that have showed that using a foam roller consistently has had a similar effect, a similar benefit to holding stretching positions and things like that, what you would normally think of as mobility training. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing that I would recommend, and I think the biggest thing that you need to be thinking about, your listeners need to be thinking about in terms of gaining more mobility, is consistency in your training. You have to be willing to put in time every day, even if it's 5 to 10 minutes in a particular muscle group, to be able to see dramatic changes over time. If you're taking 1 or 2 days out of your week to be your mobility days, and that's where you take an hour out of your time to try to gain more mobility, that's not going to work. So mobility needs to be something that's introduced in your training on a regular daily basis if you really want to see improvements. So you can give you all of the tools, all of the kind of guidelines and targeted stretches and options in terms of how to get those muscle groups more opened up, but consistency is going to be more important than anything else.
Amazing. I think Kelly Starrett says 10 minutes a day, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's what 5 to 10 minutes I think is a really good starting point. But again, 10 minutes a day is going to go much longer and much more beneficial than spending an hour 2 days a week.
Okay. Kind of like the whole you can't out train a sedentary lifestyle. If you're sedentary for the majority of the day, but you go and kick your own ass at CrossFit for 2 hours a night, 5 nights a week, you don't overcome a sedentary lifestyle with that type of training methodology, I guess, right?
Sure.
So yeah, like one thing we mentioned just before we came on record is you're also, amongst all of this exciting, busy stuff, new baby on the way, a youngster already, you are also looking to join the realm of the podcast world. Hence why you've got a significantly better setup than me with that fantastic looking microphone. I'm trying to deal with these guys. So what's the podcast going to be called and what's that going to be about?
Yeah, so we're excited. We have a lot of new things coming on board for 2020 with Power Monkey. We have some investors coming on board that we're really excited about being able to expand in some new areas. And the podcast is going to be one of them. It's going to be hosted by myself and Chad Vaughn. If you follow the CrossFit community, then you know who Chad Vaughn is. He's a two-time U.S. Olympian. He's one of the more well-respected Olympic weightlifting coaches and experts in the CrossFit community and the weightlifting community as well. He's a multiple-time U.S. national champion, 9-time U.S. national champion. He holds the Masters world record right now. Multiple Masters world records in weightlifting, and just an incredible coach, incredible guy. I've known him for a number of years, and he's going to be my co-host. It's going to be called the Power Monkey Podcast, and essentially we're going to be, interviewing a lot of the people that come to our events, to our coaches at our camps and our clinics, and a lot of other people that we know from our worlds, having been elite athletes and all the travels that we've done over the years.
Cool. So one of the things that I try and do with the podcasts as well is sort of tie some things together in the kind of final quarter or so of every interview that I do. And it's so question one I like to ask people is, in terms of physical wellness or well-being or health, what kind of things do my guests value highly? So do they have tactics, habits, routines, perhaps outside of the obvious, so for example, with yourself, outside of gymnastics, outside of CrossFit, is there anything that you do on a regular basis which helps you stay? I mean, how old are you, Dave?
I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months.
Yeah. And what you can do at 40 is unbelievable, but like it is though, there's no getting around that. I mean, I think that's you over your left shoulder in that picture.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, me and my wife.
So yeah, what is there anything that that you do on a regular basis to really try and stay as physically well as you can?
Well, I think one is just continuing to move. Like you were saying, try to combat sedentary lifestyle as much as you possibly can. Keep things interesting, take advantage. And living in Portland now, there are so many hikes and outdoors types of activities that we like to do, and try to keep things varied. Try to be a beginner at things, try to try new things. And even at 40 years old, I'm learning new things. I just started calligraphy, and I really enjoy art and things like that. So, I just try to keep my mind as pliable and interested in new things as much as I possibly can in a lot of different areas. I enjoy movies. I read as much as I possibly can. And really, I try to spend time with my family as much as I possibly can. We're doing all these things so that we can enjoy our lives and be happy and find happiness in daily life. And, you can be the most fit person in the world, or you can be the most well-read person in the world, but not understand how to live in the moment and be happy. And me being able to spend time with my daughter and my wife and enjoy every day as much as I possibly can allows me to just live a life where I'm content and not feeling like I'm wanting for anything that I don't have.
How do you is there anything that you do to try and stay in the moment, to be present? Because I must admit, I do find that difficult sometimes.
I do as well. And, I find myself on my phone way too much. And I find myself, I lived in New York for the past 10 years. My mind is racing at 100 miles an hour at all times. I end up taking on way too many projects than I probably should. And, I've always led a life that kind of was head down and go mentality. Moving to Portland and living here, for the past year plus has definitely slowed me down. And I have to say that my wife is a reason why I'm able to appreciate things much more. She has a much different perspective than I do. And even though she's been living in New York for the past 15 years, wow. She's from Portland, and she, has a mentality and a pace to her that balances me out. So my wife has allowed me to kind of recognize the importance of, putting the phone away and, turning the computer off and trying to appreciate the time that we have with each other. And so it's definitely been a challenge. It's not easy to do at all, especially for people that are motivated and want to feel like they're getting things accomplished and making changes in the world around them and that kind of stuff. But you can do those things. You can do those things and still be happy.
And how has having a daughter changed? Sorry, I'm just jumping ahead there. It is a daughter?
It is a daughter, yeah. And I will be having a second daughter coming in a couple of months, yeah. So surrounded by females.
Good luck, Dave.
Yeah. It's been incredible, to be honest with you. We both thought that we were going to have a son, and when we had daughter, it changed my world. And she's just I wake up every morning, just can't not like waiting for the moment where she wakes up and calls for us.
That's cool.
And there are challenging times. She is a very, very bright, soon to be 3-year old who is learning more than maybe quicker than maybe we were hoping for, and saying some things that act more like a teenager than she does a 3-year-old. But it's amazing. I love being a dad. As of right now, it's the best job I've ever had in my life, and I'm really looking forward to a second one coming on the way.
Is there anything in particular that's kind of taught you, do you think, that you've been able to, I always find that quite interesting to see what parental life does and changes people. I've not got a child. I'm not even certain I want one. I find the whole thing extremely scary.
It is.
But
It is.
at the same time, I enjoy finding out from people what they've learned from being a parent.
The biggest thing I've learned is patience.
Okay.
Patience. And I've always been an impatient person. And I've had to learn how to be patient, not only with my daughter, but also with my wife and our relationship, and to be able to understand other people's perspective. And the only way that, marriage and a relationship and family can not only sustain itself, but become stronger through having a child is by having patience and understanding that, there are things that take time for you to be able to kind of work through, and children are learning, and everyone kind of has their own little thing going on, and try your best to look at it from other people's perspective as opposed to just yours.
Is there anything in particular that you find yourself doing to manage that patience? I am very impatient, like extremely. And it's been quite entertaining, like trying to build this podcast. I've often end up feeling like a failure because every video hasn't gone viral yet. I haven't got a Tim Ferriss show, and I've been doing it 6 months. Why is it not working? Do you mean I get so impatient? And you seem like a very intelligent guy, and I imagine there's an element of analytical nature to the way that you approach things. I'm assuming there must be, to take on board so much. Is there anything that you've kind of dissected as a way to be more patient, and apply that to your relationship with your wife and your child, and how all those things interconnect together?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is I use breathing techniques, right? So breathing techniques that I might use in a workout, I would do the same thing here. Like, try to find a breath in a situation where I would, act impatiently or find myself reacting maybe a little bit too abruptly. So I try to find a breath and try to get my breath under control to use that as a way to help reset. I also try not to speak and try to close my mouth and not speak until I've settled down and thought about the situation a little bit more.
Okay.
And that's something that, I wouldn't have done in the past. I grew up in New Jersey and New York, and we in a big Italian family where being loud and obnoxious and just saying things is just a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And, my wife is not like that. She's complete opposite. So, when I react to certain situations in a way that would be normal for me and the way that I was growing up, it doesn't work in our relationship. So I've had to definitely use different techniques to be able to understand that other people don't respond in the same way that I do. And, finding breathing techniques, keeping heart rate down, not speaking reactively, and really taking a moment to understand and really try to kind of approach things from a better perspective have really helped me being able to control things a little bit more and just understand that, being patient is a big part of making things work.
I always remember listening to when Tony Robbins used to do, I think it was like Power Talk or something. And it was a tape series, like a thing that he sent out like a monthly, before there were apps and online courses. And I remember him speaking to, I believe it was the gentleman that wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And he discussed this idea that, in an argument, Anthony Robbins was of the belief that you never walk away from an argument. Like, it's the worst thing to do in an argument is to walk away. You stay and you solve it. And his wife, at least at the time, her biggest thing was you do not raise your voice. Like, you stay calm, you do not shout in an argument. And obviously, lo and behold, an argument would happen. He'd raise his voice, she'd storm off. And then, it's,
Right.
and I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Chimp Paradox. One of the things that my girlfriend and I use on a regular basis is, rather than saying, you've pissed me off, you've upset me, you've done this, we tend to frame it as, my monkey feels X, Y, and Z. And trying to calm down one another's monkey is a lot different to accusing the other person of doing something and getting them to react, as you say, and feeling defensive. And yeah,
Sure.
I think
that something like that might work with a company called Power Monkey, so I can see that being pulled off with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, Dave, it's approaching the time where I normally wrap things up. So I pretty much think we've done, like, normally what I now say is, what's going on with you? What's exciting and what's happening in 2020? I feel like we've covered all of that, but why don't you just let people know where is best to keep up with you moving forward? I mean, if they don't know your Instagram by now, I'm sure they do, but your Instagram, I think, is
just at Dave Durante, DaveDurante. Nice and easy, just my name. You can also follow us at Power Monkey Fitness. That's another easy way on Instagram to kind of find things that we're doing. We do have our camp, which you mentioned. PowerMonkeyCamp.com is the website. PowerMonkeyFitness.com is more for the other general information about what we're doing. The other thing that we didn't mention is we're starting some high-end retreats come this upcoming year. We haven't actually announced it to the public yet, but we're going to be doing a really high-end, low attendee, only 15 people max. We're actually almost sold out already for our first one. It's going to be in Crete, Greece. The first one, it's a spectacular location. We have an incredible Alico rig right on, this little 4-villa plaza that is all to us, and only us, and we're bringing out some of our great coaches and staff from Power Monkey to be able to do some really high-level stuff with. So it's kind of a fitcation kind of a thing that we're going to be doing for the first time and opening up to more and more coming towards the end of the year. So a lot of fun stuff going on with Power Monkey, and we're going to have more to announce into 2020.
Yeah, congratulations, Dave.
Thank you.
It sounds freaking amazing. It's another one of the many times where, particularly having been to California earlier on this year, my girlfriend's stepdad is from San Francisco, and she's got lots of family in and around that area. I am consistently reminded about the many things that it's easy to miss out on when we're stuck on this side of the pond, as they say. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So, anything planned to come to the UK?
Not right now. Like I said, we were just there a couple of weeks ago. We were in London at WIT. Myself, Chad Vaughn, and Chris Hinshaw. We're working on another project, Capacity WOD, that we unveiled recently. And we were doing our first Capacity WOD seminar at WIT. But I don't anticipate it taking too long for us to be back out there. I love going to London. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. We have a really close relationship with a lot of coaches out that way, so I anticipate we'll be back soon.
Cool. Well, Dave, I am just as appreciative, if not more so, having finished the podcast, that you were willing to take the time to talk to me. So once again, thank you so much. And next time there are events on, I will be staying up to date myself personally on all the social media platforms, and fingers crossed I can get myself to a camp, or at least the retreat.
We'd love to have you, man.
Maybe 2021, since 2020 sounds very full already.
Yeah, well, we'd love to have you. I think you'd have a blast. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, for having me on.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care.
This is Dan Ball from Wellness Academy. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. You'll find a link on the episode notes. Just tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see some offers from our sponsor, Lichfield Apart Hotel. Find them at lichfieldaparthotel.com, and we hope you'll support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. Another way to support us is to answer a short survey at yourwellnessacademy.co.uk/survey and tell us what wellness topics you'd like to hear about. I'm your host, Dan Ball. Our producer is Scott Towns, created by our executive producer, Ben Heathcote, for Wellness Academy.